Hey friends, welcome to today's video. This is a WHIMSYWEEN video where I'm pulling the prompt, the Lantern Ladies, and I'm going to create just a really simple art journal page. I just wanted to feel my oats just drawing out a few little figures, so I thought this would be a fun prompt to tackle. My original thought for this prompt was that, so you have Jack-o'-lantern, right? And that's a relatively well-known kind of Halloween motif, I think. Motif isn't the right word. Halloween character, maybe? But Jack-o'-lantern, right? But I wanted to do the lady version, like, you know, Jackie O-lantern. Jackie O! Oh, that would have been a good spin to do on that. Oh well, too late now. Don't you just love it when you have a better thought? Way too late. No, it's fine. I do love how this came out. It was a lot of fun to do and very simple and just kind of enjoyable. I just really enjoyed the process. So I'm really happy. I did Jackie, Jill, and Judy O-lantern, and these are the three sisters, and they have a bit of a funny backstory. You can try and pause the video at the end and read it if you want to. It's stupid. But to me, they're socialite sisters of Pumpkin Patch fortune and fame. Does anyone know Pumpkin Patch? It's a kid's I don't know if it's Australian. To be honest, I haven't seen it out here, so maybe it is Australian, but it's Pumpkin Patch, kids clothing. They have a little Pumpkin Patch store at the Westfield, and I don't know if it's Australian now. I should have looked that up. But either way, so to me, these were just like the three sisters behind Pumpkin Patch clothing to tie in with their, you know, their pumpkin theming. I put orange all over them because I'm just so obvious like that. If I'm going to do pumpkins, I'm going to have to do orange. Also, orange isn't a color that I work with typically, not very often at all. And in fact, my big Daniel Smith palette over there, you can, you know, see a quarter of, I only have one orange in there, and it's that Pyrrole orange, which is a really interesting orange color. It's very vibrant, but you know, I was using lots of water, lots of washes, so you can see that it does mute down a lot of that watercolor. It is the way that I like to work. It doesn't give you the most vibrant results, but you can always go back in and layer it over the top and just add a lot more pigment. I like to go lighter and build it back up with depth once I'm kind of settling on something, but for the initial washes, I just keep them like that, just a wash. And so I did pull out my Mungyo palette, which if you've followed Lindsay at the Frugal Crafter, she has actually just done a very in-depth review on this watercolor palette. I did a review back on it last year called the Ultimate Watercolor Palette ? And it is not as nearly as detailed. So if you're looking to know more information about that palette, go and check out the Frugal Crafter on YouTube, and there is a big review there. I still love it. I still think it's a great palette to start with because it's got a ton of convenience mixes, and it's a pseudo student grade. It wants to tell you it's artist quality, but I don't believe it is, and I don't think Lindsay came to that conclusion either. It is more of a student grade, and possibly the same manufacturer that does a lot of the private labeling of a lot of the student grade watercolors you might already own. So this was a great way to have the whole collection rather than buying 4 or 5 different 12 pans and getting a lot of duplicates. So also check that video out as well, because you might be purchasing, if you do get that Mungyo palette, you might be purchasing duplicates of some of your watercolor tins that you might already own. It's all speculation and hearsay, but to be honest, Lindsay and I both swatched them out, and the similarities, the comparisons are just uncanny. So just check that out if you want to know more about that palette, but it does have a few more oranges in there, and that's why I pulled that out, because orange just mustn't be one of my favorite colors. I don't know if I use it any other time of year than Halloween. I know personally myself, I don't get dressed in orange because it looks like I'm about to throw up. I have a very interesting skin tone. It's what I like to call pink. I'm white, I'm Caucasian, but I have a very rosy kind of base to my skin tone. I don't know if this video is kind of picking it up because the lighting always looks different when you're in natural light, and I do boost kind of like the brightness of the videos sometimes if it's a little dull, but yeah, and typically in any case I feel like my skin just looks like a little bit sunburnt all the time, but it's just because it's really pink. Why am I talking about that? Oh, because orange looks terrible on it. Some people look beautiful in orange, and I used to have this orange shirt back in the day, and I always wanted to wear it, and I guess I can wear fluoro orange because you know, that's just obnoxious, and I don't think anyone looks good in it, so you kind of just get away with it. Does it even matter? I get through life not wearing orange. It's really not the end of the world. I'm going into the background here with some of that watercolor green. It's a, oh goodness, it's serpentine, genuine. So it does kind of pull out greeny yellow, and this is right in that spectrum of, like, I don't know if it's green or yellow, but let's just say it's a green-yellow background, and I do go in with a different type of green. I think Appetite. I should have written that down. I don't know what it was, but either way, I dilute them so much that sometimes when I'm working really lightly like this, I feel like it's irrelevant to know what colors it is sometimes, because it's the most muted wash of a color, and you could achieve the effect with anything very standard. The reason I have used Daniel Smith watercolors and have grown to love them is because there's a lot of really different mixes of pigments in there, and some really beautifully granulating watercolors, so you can get really cool effects really easily. So something like Rose of Ultramarine, once you put a lot of that pigment down and you also put a bunch of water in there, as that pigment starts to separate, sorry I'm talking about this, it's not even on screen, but the reason, like I'm saying, Daniel Smith is expensive, so you want to kind of know why you're purchasing it, or you want to kind of know if you need to. I personally don't create anything that needs to be archival. I'm always just working in a journal or something, to just like a little throwaway or something. Not a throwaway, but you know what I mean. I'm not exhibiting in any galleries or anything, and I don't display anything in the harsh sunlight. So I typically can get away with having a really large watercolor palette of student grade colors, and then I don't have to worry about mixing, because I'm not great at it. I always kind of mix too much, or I want a very specific color and I can't be bothered trying to figure it out if there's a convenience mix available. But the Daniel Smith watercolors just have some interesting properties that you can't get, or you just really can't easily achieve with a lower grade paint. So my option for, well, my advice to anyone that is looking to build watercolor palettes is to look at the colors that perform in a way that you just couldn't get out of a watercolor you already own. So a lot of those granulating textures, a lot of the multiple pigment mixes that are really interesting. Actually, in the top of the screen there on the left, you can see the Rose of Ultramarine swatch. It's kind of red and purple and blue, and it just looks beautiful. You can see the Zwazite. I've got a lot of granulating colors up there: Cobalt Violet Deep, Sodalite, Purpurite. Those are really, really interesting colors that are really, it's hard to get that effect with anything, you know, that isn't a Daniel Smith or a very expensive watercolor. So as you're looking to build it, I would never recommend buying a whole palette of Daniel Smith unless you're balling out of control and just want to do that. In which case, let's go shopping. You're a shout. No, but I would just kind of suggest that, like, start with a student grade. Start with a set of a lot of, you know, mixing colors and a few convenience mixes that you know you'll use a lot. And then as you're looking to kind of just splurge a little bit, just kind of appreciate watercolor a little bit more, then I would go for something that just has a really interesting texture or a really interesting pigment mix that you've never seen before, or you've never been able to paint with before, because it will really change how you go about rendering a piece, and it will really change you know, the love that you might have for texture now once you start using some of these Daniel Smith watercolors. I mean, I never used to be into texture. In fact, I only loved really flat coloring, so I would love Copic markers or acrylic paints or gouache even, you know, even though I didn't work with it very often, but that very flat color blocking kind of a technique. Even with pencil, I would try and really scrub the pigment into the page really hard so it would kind of dull down, and not dull down, but, you know, really flatten out that color. And I'd really kind of abuse those pencils to get it in there. But now, I think ever since I started using the first one, Moon Glow, and Kyanite Genuine, and these Payne's Blue Gray, like these were the first Daniel Smith watercolors that I was using. I just kind of fell so into how interesting those textures were. So this is what I love to play with. And I think, you know, just take for instance, if you can see the swatch up in the left hand corner, these are those Daniel Smith. Now if you look at the dresses here, even though I've used a lot of water, you can see how those are just stolid colors. Like the pigments aren't really separating, there's no real granulation there. There's some water pooling and a little, you know, a few blooms and blossoms in there, but it's nothing super textured. Even that you could say it's just wishy-washy, but it's kind of flat. Now if I had an orange, you know, really granulating kind of a pigment. I could even mix a few colors together and try and achieve that, which I'm kind of now kicking myself for not doing, but I had no idea I'd talk about texture today. I might try it later, who knows, but I don't have any of those oranges. You know, doing that, putting that together and putting that down in the dress would have made it so much more interesting to look at as a texture. And so that's why I would just kind of encourage you to, as you're building that palette, just look for things that you couldn't create with what you already have. It can be tempting to get some of like the really pretty colors and, oh, this is just like a really beautiful red, but ultimately most of the time I find that you don't need that, and you can always use your pretty red from a cheaper set, from a student grade set, and it gives the same effect. So that's just my top tip as you're looking to build into some of these more expensive paints. There are a lot of handmade watercolors as well. A lot of people out there that make handmade watercolors. I love to use designs by Rachel Beth. I think she just has beautiful color mixes, and some of those I can get a really nice texture out of as well, especially the shimmering, like the metallic watercolors she does. Copper Candles is one of my favorite watercolors of all time. It's just like painting with liquid metal. It's beautiful. And I've even used Xanadu Art Studio. I use a lot of those colors as well because there's some really interesting mixes there. I have a really light pink that has a bit of a purple iridescence to it, and I think the color is called Flesh. I'm not sure because she likes to do like limited run batches, so I find it really difficult to recommend any specific color because it typically isn't available once that batch is gone. But just to have a look over there, because there's some really interesting mixes there as well. Especially with handmade watercolors, I mean, you're going to notice a difference as well, and it really just, you know, sometimes it doesn't even depend on the person. Sometimes it literally depends on the batch. You might have one person that has a lot of success with something and someone that doesn't like it as much. But you know, I think with art supplies, a lot of stuff is personal preference. To be honest, I could tell you that this is the best colored pencil in the world, and I can't rave enough about it, and I've never used something so great in a million years, but you might not like it just because you don't like a softer lead, or you don't want that oil-based pencil, you wanted a wax-based pencil because you do a lot of resist techniques. And you know what I mean? Like it does really come down to personal preference. But as people are entering into mixed media, I think that's who I more talk to when I'm kind of offering advice, because there was a time when I, you know, had a really limited supply of, you know, mixed media. I had a few good sets of some standard stuff, but now that I get to experiment with a lot of it, there are definitely products that I would recommend over others, and definitely a way to go about, you know, building a collection for yourself. So just my 2 cents worth. Please take it with a grain of salt. If none of that speaks to you, then I hope you found watching the I hope you found watching the video interesting. I loved how this came out. It just kind of took me right back to where I love to be. These, you know, really unbothered looking ladies. You know, I'm loving that. So also, I love that it's just a really simple journal page, and I get to write a fun little story down there. You know, today was one of those days where I looked at it and I kind of thought, why do I do this? Why do I have this? Like, what's this for? And I have those days just like everybody else has those days, but I looked at it and I thought, you know what? I had fun doing this, and that's a funny little story, and every time I flip through this book, I hope I get the same giggle out of it as I did creating it today. And you know what? That's all worth it. Beyond this being my job, this is still something that I set aside time to do just to express myself, and it doesn't have to be anything serious. It can just be because, you know, I've got a sense of humor that I might want to indulge, or I've got a stupid story that I might want to use in a fun way. But getting back to that childlike sense of wonder and imagination, I just think, you know, it might seem stupid sometimes, but it comes in so valuable in other parts of your life that you just might not realize is what I'm trying to say. That you might not realize that that's where it's coming to play. You know, problem solving is a great thing to have a childlike sense of wonder for. I don't know, just if you ever turned on the news, you might want to go back to being a kid, because this is a crazy world we live in. So I'm always going to push you to do it, even if there's no particular reason to do it, or even if it's just a stupid reason, like, not stupid, but a silly reason, like, oh, it's just a funny story. There's definitely a point to doing that. And especially if you've got kids, I feel like if I was a kid and I knew someone that art journaled like this, I would steal all their art journals. And I just want to create with them. Sometimes I was so lucky to have the childhood I had in being indulged in all these creative ways, and I just wish I'd found art journaling sooner. I wish I'd found mixed media sooner, because I just love that my whole world has opened up, and now I can kind of express whatever I want to express, whenever I want to express it. And hopefully it brings a smile to your face, or hopefully it stirs up something inside of you that makes you want to do it as well. So thanks for watching today's WHIMSYWEEN video. There's Inktober videos going on all month long, and I'll be back with another one of those tomorrow. But for today, this is the piece, Jackie, Jill and Judy O'Lantern of Pumpkin Patch Fortune and Fame. Until next time, bye.